These are the 5 ways you can mess up paper 2. Number 1, you can get the question order wrong. Going 1 to 5, probably not the best idea. You can get the timings wrong and spend too long on questions that don't carry enough marks. How much do you write? You may have been taught a paragraph method which isn't helping you. What on earth does quality mean? It isn't what you expect. And number 5, how can you plan question 5 in order to get top marks? Let's find out the answers, get the cures. Where have I got these cures from? Reading hundreds of answers marked by senior examiners. And those secrets are coming your way now. Every bit of advice I give you in this video is only to be taken if it improves a problem you've had in the mocks. So, if you didn't get the marks that you thought you could get, let's look at question order. Question 5 is worth 40 marks, 50% of the grade on this paper. If you found that you were running out of energy, or running out of ideas, or running out of time, do question 5 first. 40 marks, as many of them as you can get, in the bag. Then we have question 3. Why would I suggest question 3? Because you only have to read one source. If you read source A and source B, it's a huge amount to take in. Question 3 says, just read source A and then only answer from this small bit of it. Mentally, easy to do. And so I want to start easy. And there are 12 marks for that, which is quite a lot. So I'm going to do question 3 first, reduce my stress, maximise my mark. Now I'm left with question 4 and question 2, and both of them want me to read source A and source B. So obviously I'll go for the one that gives me the most marks, which is question 4. It's going to give me 16 marks. So there's no way I'd do question 2 first because it's only worth 8 marks. Now, if I'm running out of time, I can rush question 2 and I might only end up with 4 marks instead of 6 out of 8, or 5 marks instead of 8, or whatever. I'm going to lose hardly any marks. Question 1 is worth 4 marks, and nationally the average score is 3.8. That means even students who are completely useless at English are still going to score 3 marks. So I know they're going to be easy to bag at the end. Those are my tactics, but only change to my tactics if it solves a problem you had in the mocks. The exam paper has written on its front page, spend 15 minutes reading through the paper. I will 100% not be doing that when I sit this exam in 2 days' time as of making this video. Why? Because the brain can't remember more than 4 things, and you will meet many more than that while you're reading, and also you only get marks for what you write. So I'm going to maximise my writing time. On the reading paper, that means I give myself 1.5 minutes per mark. What does that mean? 8 mark question, 12 minutes, 12 mark question, 18 minutes, 16 mark question, 24 minutes. The 4 mark question does theoretically give me 6 minutes, but I won't need as many as that because I'm going to do it last. Then we have question 4. I'm going to spend 40 minutes on that, 1 minute per mark, which allows me to steal up to 5 minutes in case I overrun on any of these. That won't happen to me, but it might happen to you because your reading speed will be different. You're not an English teacher, you're not an adult. The most important thing to remember about the timings is, let's imagine you're on the 12 mark question, question 3, and you think, oh, right, I've got to find a couple more quotes, that will take you lots of time. Let's say it's going to take you 4 minutes. Those 4 minutes on question 4 or on question 2 are going to deliver you those missing marks much more quickly. The marks at the beginning of a question are easy to get because even failing students need to be able to get them. The marks at the end of the question, they're all grade 8 and grade 9. Hard to find. So don't overrun on any question. Finish your sentence, move on. Ow. Right, how much should you be aiming to write in each question? Your teachers have probably told you loads of paragraph techniques. Do 2 paragraphs for that, do 3 paragraphs for this. This is your paragraph structure. If that has been working for you in the mocks, 100% stick to that. But if you find that is still not giving you the grades you want, the chances are it's because you're not writing enough. How do you work out how much to write? It is like this. Points make prizes. What do I mean by that? I mean you need to write explanations. An explanation is anything that could begin with these words. This suggests. When I do the exam on Friday, I'm actually going to start every single explanation I write with those words because I will then use my answer next year to prove to you that this system works. You know, once I've bought the papers back from the exam board, because AQA make you pay for those papers. Another reason I hate AQA. But what does this suggest mean? It means any of these words: implies, shows, indicates, reveals, emphasises, connotes, signifies, all those things. I won't be using those words because I'm not going to show off my vocabulary. I want to prove that it's having the explanation that works. It's not the vocabulary you use. You don't have to use this suggests. You can show off all your brilliant vocabulary, but remember, it's doing the job of this suggests, which means it's introducing an explanation. So, for question 2, I need 8 explanations for 8 marks. I'll talk about the tactics later. For question 3, I need 12 explanations to get 12 marks. That's 12 this suggests, or other words that mean this suggests. For question 4, there are 16 marks, and because I want 100%, I need 16 explanations, which means I'm going to write 16 this suggests. I'm an adult and I'm pretty confident that my explanations will be spot on. However, you will be under pressure in the exam, so will I, to be fair, but you will be under pressure and you can't rely that the quality of each explanation is going to be good enough. And so you might think, well, okay, well, I'm going to aim for a little bit more. Can I write 9 instead of 8 or 13 instead of 12? Or not? Because remember, I don't want you to overrun in terms of time. But that is the easiest way for you to work out, have I written enough for the mark that I want? Remember, you're not aiming for full marks. You might say, well, I'm going to get a grade 9 with 10 out of 12 here, so I'm just going to aim for 10. I'm going to get a grade 9 with 12 here, so instead of having 16, I'll aim for 12. You know, don't beat yourself up with stress. Don't think I've got to hit those big numbers. You don't. You just have to hit the grade that you want, and the key to it is the number of explanations, the number of this suggests. Then we come to question 5. This question 5 is much easier to get marks on than in paper 1. And by that I mean you don't have to write as much. I've seen very good grade 9 answers that are only 300 words long. That is for gifted students. However, it's also possible to get grade 7, 8 and 9 and not be a gifted student. But to do that, you will probably need more words because you need to put forward a better argument, which I'll show you in section 5 of the video. What is quality. You might think that quality is being able to use language brilliantly, being articulate, having the right vocabulary. And it is, but only the very best students can do that. However, I'm going to teach you how to get the top grades without that. We can't all be geniuses, but we can all get top grades. And for the purpose of this, quality is quantity. Quantity will get us quality. Let me explain how that will work. Let's think of question 3, where you have to quote and then talk about the effect on the reader. What does that mean? It means I get a quote and I write, this suggests that, blah, 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 and I explain what it suggests. Now, a genius student will then be able to zoom in on individual words on the quote and say, and this also suggests, and this word here further suggests, look at me, I'm a genius, I've given you 3 explanations about 1 quote. Fine, you are a genius, but what has got you the marks is quantity. 3 explanations for that quote. A student who is not a genius in English might only find 1 explanation about the quote, 1 this suggests. So how will they get to 12 explanations? Well, they're going to try to get to 12 quotes. 12 quotes, 12 explanations. Yeah, a genius student might say, I can do it in 4 quotes. I've got 4 quotes, 3 explanations for each quote, 12 explanations. Genius. Yeah, fine. You can be a genius, but someone who isn't a genius can get there by getting 1 or 2 explanations for each quote. And that's how it works for every question. You don't have to be a genius, you just have to write fast, keep explaining, this suggests, the right number of this suggests, for the number of marks. That is quantity, but quantity is quality. Right, let's talk about the tactics for each question. Question 2 needs 4 comparisons. You're going to get 2 marks for each comparison. So as long as you are finding this suggests from source A and this suggests from source B, and you're saying how that is different, that comparison will get 2 marks. For 8 marks, you just need 4 of those comparisons. Simple. The easiest way to do that is probably in 4 paragraphs, but you don't have to. You can do it in 2, you can do it in 1. Examiners don't mind. It's the number of comparisons with your explanations which gets you the mark. Question 3, you already know by now, 12 explanations, 12 marks, however many quotes that takes you. Whether you're a genius or not, doesn't matter. Question 4. This one is difficult because it asks you to keep comparing source A to source B. And that takes time, just switching between sources, but it also takes mental energy. It's called split attention. And so this is my solution, so that there isn't the constant switching and there isn't split attention, and therefore it's easier to write more. So remember, I've got 24 minutes for that question. I'm going to spend 12 of those minutes on source A, just writing as many explanations as I can related to the perspective in the question. Then I get to the end of my 12 minutes and I say, the writer of source B has some similar experiences, but their perspectives are different. That tells the examiner that I am comparing, and then I'm just going to go through source B. When I do, my explanations will still be, this suggests, but I will add whether this is similar or different to source A. So that's when I'm comparing, when I'm writing about source B. Even better, the examiners don't say, oh, you've got to write one amount for source A and an equal amount for source B. No. So I don't have to find as many things in my source B to compare back to source A. Or vice versa. Will you remember how to compare? Well, it will be so easy, won't it? Because you're just comparing back to something that you just wrote. So the memory demands are not going to be large, and you won't constantly have to flick between sources. Okay, question 5. And what is the simple planning method that is going to force you to write enough for top grades and force the examiner to think you have written a convincing argument? Well, luckily, the help is always in the actual question. So here is a past question. Scientists say that teenagers are not like adults. They learn and socialise differently and need sleep at different times. Education needs a radical rethink to meet students' needs. Lots of meat to pick off the bones, and this is how we unpick it. We're going to divide it up into parts. This question gives us 5 parts. Some give us 6, some give us 7, but they are generous. Let's look at the parts. We're going to say education needs to change. Why? Because teenagers learn differently to adults. Why else? Well, because they socialise differently to adults as well. And why else? Well, because they sleep at different times and have different sleep patterns. And then we're going to start offering some radical solutions based on those 3 things. And when we look at those solutions, we're going to think about meeting the needs of students, not exam boards or parents. So now I have 5 chunky paragraphs that I can write in a logical sequence that's going to lead me to top grades. How will I make each paragraph chunky and top grade worthy? Right, the second planning technique is to look at how those changes will make things different in 1 year, so immediately, but then if they continued, what would society be like in 10 years? And then let's think about your children or your grandchildren in 30 years' time. How would society be so much better then? Most students will only think about the immediate effects. They won't be thinking about the 10-year and 30-year consequences, and so their arguments just won't be as convincing. But once you delve into the long-term consequences to society, you're always way more convincing. And grade 8, grade 9, the marking criteria says a convincing argument. This is an easy way to get there. So I'll give you a brief taste of that. Let's say teenagers learn from gamification. So either cooperative games or games when they're in competition with others. Therefore, we're going to introduce that into classrooms with league tables and rewards and levelling up. In 1 year's time, that would lead to students being more interested, engaged and excited in their lessons. They would get more dopamine and they would associate that with learning. What would then happen? Well, over 10 years, we would reverse the trend of students not wanting to come to school and having high absence levels. What would be the 10-year consequence of that? Students would get higher grades. They would have more options post-18 for apprenticeships or university. They would have a better range of choice of job to go to. They would be more fulfilled when they start work. And in 30 years' time, a more fulfilled person is likely to be earning more or leading a life that they value. Both of these things are fantastic for society. Someone who is earning more is going to be a better parent simply because they can afford help when things go wrong. They will be able to educate their own children more easily before they even get to school, and then we will have a virtuous circle whereby gamifying learning in schools, we've increased the engagement and performance, and then the children of those lucky students who've had that gamified education will also benefit, and then as a society we will get more and more qualified, more and more intelligent, which will allow us to compete in the international markets against the massive populations of China and India and Brazil, who are going to dominate the next 30 years. You see how none of those ideas would come to anyone if they just think about the first year. But once you jump ahead to 10 years and 30 years, it's going to come to you easily. Your answer will be way better than anyone else's, and you're going to get top grades. Now, I will make a separate video, which I'll attach here, about how to do this precise question with all of the 5 points taken to these moments in the future. These are the persuasive techniques you should always try to use. Start with an anecdote, a little story that you can use to illustrate the point that you're going to argue. Then, a little later on, you will need a counter-argument. This is the most important thing that people who disagree with you will present. So you anticipate that and then say why that counter-argument is wrong and you are still right. You will need a conclusion that looks at that long-term future, because that is what's going to make you more convincing. And even more convincing is to use the Brucey bonus word society. You're not just changing life for you, for your school, for your town, but for everybody. That is always more convincing. So those are the ingredients in your paragraphs. What are the ingredients in your sentences? The most powerful rhetorical techniques are alliteration. Use as much of it as you can. Patterns of 3, lists of 3, repetition of 3 things, sentences in 3 parts. Any way you can get 3s into your writing, do it. It makes it more persuasive. Then we have metaphor. Sure, you can use simile, but metaphor is even better. The more metaphor you use, the more convincing your argument. You need emotive language. If you want something to be disgusting, use words that make it disgusting. If you want it to be fantastic and praiseworthy, use emotive words that make it sound amazing and wonderful and awesome. And then the easiest one of the lot, the rhetorical question. I can't imagine why people don't use it, but they don't. If you get grades 4, 5 and 6, I can pretty much be certain you're not using rhetorical questions. But if you use at least 3 in your answer, it's a sign that you're a grade 7 writer. I mean, it just kind of works as a formula. So steal the formula, write your rhetorical questions. The next 2 bits of advice you will never have heard before. So firstly, please don't make up statistics, and please don't make up experts unless you absolutely know that that expert sounds realistic to an adult and that statistic sounds realistic to an adult. Why is this so important? Because the examiner is marking how convincing you are. And as soon as you invent an expert who couldn't possibly exist and a statistic which the adult knows couldn't possibly be right, you've lost the power to convince. So avoid that at nearly all costs. I will not be inventing experts or statistics when I do the exam on Friday. Have a show-off sentence or more than one in which you go large, 30 words or more. You need, of course, to be really good at using commas and possibly colons in order to do this. But even if your punctuation goes wrong, the marks that you lose in AO6 won't be as damaging as the ones you gain for the content of your writing. So, go for a show-off sentence or two. You can find detailed explanations about how I approach every single question in these ways on my website, or you can get hold of a guide for every single question at unbelievable value on my website, $4.99. Link is in the description.